Hi children, welcome to ICT Learning. So this is the second part of the programming chapter for grade 9. So if you haven't watched my previous video for this chapter, please go and watch them because this is the continuation of programming part 1 video. Okay, yeah, let's start. So in here they are talking about programming with nested repetitions. That means repetition within a repetition, right? So in these examples are like visually how you can check this thing. Let's do it and see whether we can get the same design, right? So I'm using Scratch tool, right? So as always, we'll start from this, right? So then there is something called clear. So hope you remember last time also we had a new extension, pen extension, right? There it is having something called erase all in new edition, right? So then you clear it up. Then you take the pen up, right? Then you have to do some movements, right? So you can go to some kind of XY coordinate positions. Usually we start from 0 position. And then, okay, then you can move the pen down, right? And then we are going to use the repetition control block, right? There are two repetition control blocks. Hope you remember this is for definite number of times, definite times of iterations, and this is based on a condition, right? So here the number of repetitions are 100, and inside that there's another block, right? So this is what we call nested iterations, nested repetitions, right? So what is happening is when you come for the first iteration in here, they will do 4 times, right? Then you move 100 steps and then you turn by 90 degrees, right? After that, need to change the color of the pen by 10. By 10 is because to do it random way, so you can have multiple colors. Then finally you turn anti-clockwise again by 5 degrees, right? So when you come into this block, so for the first iteration of this one, it will do this part 4 times and then change the color and turn and then only again do the same thing. Okay, hope you understand. We'll start and see. So in this part, actually, if you see carefully, it is drawing a square, right? So it has done 100 repetitions. Okay, hope you understood. So try different things. So here actually that's why they move 100 steps and do iteration. So this is having a square. You can change this. You can try different things and see what are the patterns you are getting. Okay. So in the exam, they won't ask these kind of things because you this thing you have to do it and see because I don't think like at once you can think and do this one. It's you have to do these kind of things, right? So here it's about the snakes and the ladder game, right? Hope I explained the same flow chart for you earlier also, but let's see how this is happening. So here repetition will be with the selections, right? So you start, you toss the die and you get the value from the user, right? What is the value of the dice, right? Then you have to increment your counter. Now you will be on a square like maybe 5 like that. So then you have to increment the value based on the value you got from the dice, right? And then you check some conditions. whether did you reach for a bottom of a ladder. If it's bottom of the ladder, then you have to take the counter up to the ladder, right? And if it is yes, then you do it. If no, you check another condition whether you reach a square with a cobra or the snake head, right? If that is the case, then you have to take the counter down. You have to come down, right? So if that is also no, then they are checking whether the number is 36, right? Because 36 is the end of this one. This is having only 36 squares. In the real one, maybe you are having up to 100, but in this example, it's up to 36. So you have to check whether you have actually reached here, end of the game, right? So in that same thing, you will show end of the game and the game will finish. Okay. So we'll do this one. Don't be scared when you see this. If you think logically and do it, it's not that much hard thing. Okay, we'll start. So initially, there are two variables you have to have to keep the value you get from the dice and the value on the square, right? So we'll have two variables. Number of the square. We can use this for only for this, right? And then we'll have another variable called value. Actually, this is the value from the dice. We had two variables, so we'll set these values to 0 for the starting point. Normally, we have to initialize our variables for the like initial like 0, 1, those kind of values when you start the program, right? Then you're using a repeat condition with a condition, right? Because you have to repeat this until your 36 or it is more than that, right? So we'll have operator, right? So we have to first have a O condition. So O means either this or that, right? So we have to check first whether 36 is reached or the value is more than 36, right? So we'll check value, sorry. We'll check whether the value is more than 36 or whether the value is actually 36, right? So this should be 36. So this is where you reach the final square, okay? So we'll take the variable number of the square should be either more than 36 or equal to 36, right? So then if that is not the case, you give the commands to the user, right? You are saying first, so this is the flow, like initial flow. But before starting the flow, you check a condition. That's the only difference. Otherwise, you just do this, right? Toss the dice and you ask user to toss the dice. And then you ask user to give some input, right? Because the toss value you don't know. So you're asking what is the toss value from the user. And you get that input and you have to pass it to the set value thing, right? So you get that answer and you have to give that to the value variable, right? And then you have to change the number of the square also based on the value you got from the dice, right? So for that you have to check you actually have to add these two values, right? You have to get the number of square and the value like this. Then you print the answer. Hope you remember the join thing. So you join the value and tell something like move the counter forward. So you are telling the user, now you got this value. So move the counter uh, this much up to this much. So you can wait for 4 seconds here. And then you ask that two questions, whether you reach for a snake or a ladder, right? So you ask, did it land at the bottom of a ladder? And wait, right? So based on the answer, there will be two conditions, right? Remember, you first ask this and then you check whether you have reached for a snake, right? If those two are not only, you just move forward. Otherwise, you have to change the counter. So there should be a if else, right? So if your answer is yes, that means, sorry, we have to take operator first. Okay, if your answer is yes, then you have to uh, do the change accordingly. If your answer is yes, that means you are at in a square at the bottom of the ladder. So you have to increment your counter accordingly, right? So you tell the user to move the counter up to the top of the ladder actually, right? Then you are asking the value of the that particular on top square because we have to change our counter value accordingly. Actually, what is the number of the square itself is enough. It's a bit confusing the wordings. What is the number of the ladder of the square? Actually, what is the number of the square after you move top? What is the now current value? That's what just we are needing. And then we take the variable adjustment to be done. So you change your number of the square to the new answer, right? That is the new value after you move the dice to the top of the ladder, right? Then the else part, right? Similar thing. In there, we have to have another thing, right? Because we are first asking from the user. The else part, we are asking whether did you reach for a ladder? Sorry, did you reach for a snake? Okay, on the head of the of a snake. So then in there, you have to check again if the condition is yes only, you have to do this. Okay, that's the most important thing. And then we are using another if statement is enough because else part, it's actually out of the thing, right? So if and then you have to take the operator, the equal one, right? And you take the answer. And if the answer is yes, then you have to do similar thing like this, right? So you say the user to move down, slide down to the bottom of the snake. something like that. And then you ask the value on the square, similar thing like this. We'll use the same thing. What's the number? You can duplicate this. Okay. So ask the value and you change the value accordingly, right? So when this if part is no, it will come out and it's come out from the else, this block also, then it will go up here because this is the repetition. And check the number of square, then do the same thing. Hope you understood. So this repetition will be happening until you reach the 36 square or more than that when the count value is more than that. But until that, you toss it, you get the toss value, you check the value and add it, and then you check whether you land it on a snake or a ladder, do them accordingly, then you do the same thing. It's not very hard, right? Okay, so this logical thinking is the most important thing you have to improve, not that you can do this example. Okay. Okay, programming with arrays. So arrays is a new thing, right? Because this is the first time you are maybe hearing that word also. So in grade 7 and 8, and in this one also up to this point, we used variables, right? Hope you remember. So you use so many variables to keep the values, right? So because variables are used to store values temporarily, right? So now think you have like five marks are there, right, for a student, right? So there are 5 question papers and there are 5 marks like this. So you store by using different variables. Now there are 5 variables for the 5 values, right? So each variable should be given a name, right? Mark 1, mark 2, mark 3, like that you have to give a name and you have to store this value. Now you understand if you have 100 marks, you have to have 100 variables with 100 names and it is going to become a bit complicated, right? Because you have large number of variables and it's very hard to manage these also, right? It's not very easy to get these values also back, right? It's like mostly hard coded stuff there. So that is why we have something called arrays. So arrays is a data structure where you can store like any number of items with a single variable name. Usually we keep same type of information or same type of values in this, right? That means now with the numeric numbers, you will keep all the numeric values like the marks of a student. You will use array and keep all the marks there, right? So by using arrays, you can make the program less complex, right? So build in an array, right? So first, hope you understood the idea, right? So you are going to create a list for marks, right? Something like that. And then you give a name and you can proceed. So we'll do this in Scratch and see. Okay, under variables, you can make a list and you can give a name for the like animals or marks or something like that. And for this sprite only. Okay, so this is how you are preparing lists, right? And you can access that list using this thing also, see? Okay. Assigning items into the array. So you can enter values to the array. I told you array will contain lot of multiple values, right? So you can put now in this example, they have get some list called country and they are putting all the values to the country from the user input, right? We'll do it and see. So I will rename the same list to country. Okay, countries. Okay, then I'm going to add values for that, right? No, as the normal way, we'll start it when the flag is clicked, right? Then I have to delete all the records from the list. So delete all from the countries that is available in the variable section, right? So you delete all and you do a repetition until 5 times. It depends, right? If you want to do it more than 5, you can do. So in this example, they are asking 5 countries from the user. So you repeat until 5 and you ask some countries from the user, right? Enter the country, right? And then you add that particular value, that answer to the countries or country in your example, it's just country in for that list, right? Okay, we'll run the program and see. So they're asking a country. First, we'll give Sri Lanka. Okay, can you see it is added to this particular list, right? Then they're asking another one, India. See, the list is getting populated. Japan, China. I will put Netherlands. Okay, so that is only up to that because I have asked only for 5 repetitions. Okay, hope it's very clear. So otherwise, we have to use 5 variables, country 1, country 2, country 3, like that, we have to keep it. But using the countries whole array, we can add any number of countries and then we can iterate through the list and get those values back also. Right? Not adding only, no. We have to read the values back also. So then after you insert the values, now we are going to read the values from the same program, right? Okay, we'll use the same thing and now we have populated the list and we are going to read the values from that, right? So for that, we have to keep a variable like index. They have used v underscore con. It's not very good naming. We'll just put index because we are going to access the uh, list using the index of it, like 0th element, 1st element, 2, 3, 4, like that. We are going to get it, right? So we'll set the index to 0, right? Normally, remember in arrays, you starting from the 0th index. 0th index means the first element actually, right? So you do like this and then you get the value and you print it. Okay, you print the value of the 0th index, right? So all the array things are here. Okay. So for this iteration, we are using that variable. So item 0, that is Sri Lanka, of the countries will be printed. And then you have to increment this index. Okay. So then 0 will become 1. Oh, sorry, I didn't use a repeat control block. I missed that. We have to do repetitively this one. So we'll do how many times we have to do. Do you understand? Until this, because you can hard code like 5, but it's not good. You have to check the length of this array. That means there are 5 elements, 10 elements. So it is like, otherwise, if you just give a repeat until 5 times, it's like hard coded. If you increase the value of these values, then it's not going to work. So that's why we are using this length concept. So we do this until the array's length. That means length will be 5. So 5 times. Okay. And I'm going to add the same block I have added earlier. Right. Did you understand? Now we'll do it from the beginning. They are first asking the countries. That is the first part we did. Again, I will put India, Sri Lanka, Japan, China, Netherlands. So I'm populating this, right? Then it's going to print it. See, 5 times it will print. Netherlands was not printed. So as in this one, normally in the programming, indexes are starting with 0 for arrays. I think in the older version also it was same, but in this one they have changed it. So that's why Netherlands was not printed. We'll try this again. I have changed the index to 1, right? So from the first position it will be starting. Sri Lanka, India, China, um, Japan. We'll use UK for these things. Sri Lanka, India, China, Japan, UK. So because index is 1, otherwise it didn't print the earlier one, right? If it is 0, we'll do it and see. SL, India, China, Japan, UK. SL, India, China, Japan. Yeah, UK was not printed. So it should be indexed starting from 1 because otherwise it's going to be wrong. This new edition has some thing because it start from the index 1 scenario. Okay. So they have done a comparison for you. If you don't use arrays, then you have to have marks and names like this. This is about 5 students and having their marks. So if you use a lot of variables, you have to keep so many variables and it's very hard to take and read these values back also. But in this one, it's very simple. You keep 2 arrays for the names and the marks, and you get the user input and just add those things to the 2 arrays, right? So you have 2 arrays, you have names and marks, so you can iterate first the index, second index like that, then you can easily read these values, right? So it shows that using arrays will simplify your program. Okay, here also there's another example. A school conducted a competition and like they will ask get the students who are having good marks, right? And that is what they have done. If the marks are more than 75, they will select those students. Okay, so they have 2 arrays, names and marks, right? So they will first, this part was explained earlier also, they will repeat 10 times and they will ask the students name and the marks, right? And then those things will be iterated back and then will print those values. So I am not going to do this. Hope it's not very hard, right? It's just having a repeat until and there's a condition and there's a if else, right? So you can manage. Only the difference is there are 2 arrays here. They keep 2 separate arrays and based on the same counter, you can iterate both the arrays. That's the only difference. Yeah, programming with problem analysis. So in this section, basically we are talking about um, when we have a question, when we have a problem, we have to divide it into simple things, and then you have to uh, solve it, right? So in this example, what they basically want is to get the average of 10 numbers, right? So for that, you have to have sections. First, we have to get the inputs of 10 numbers. So that's what they have done, right? So shall we do it? Okay, as usual, you start with the flag and then there is a repetition. So you have to repeat 10 times. You have to get 10 numbers from the user, right? So ask the user to enter the number, right? And then you have to keep a list, right? You keep a list like numbers, and then you have to add this answer to the numbers list. Hope this is very clear. If I run quickly and show you, you add these numbers to the list. Okay. So this is where you take the input. Now see how I'm not worrying about the average bar. I'm doing it slowly. First I'm reading and getting the 10 numbers, right? Then I have to get the total of these 10 numbers, right? So for that, I have to iterate a whole array using a counter and then get each number, and then I have to add it to the total. So I need two variables, right? I need total variable. I'm not worrying about the average now. I'm going to take the total because you know you have to take the total of 10 numbers and then divide by 10. Then only you get the average. And then you have the count, right? So both these values should be initialized to 0, count and the total. That's the best practice. Always you have to make these things into 0. Then again the control block, you have to repeat this 10 times and you have to get the total first, right? So you have to take the total and the set that total. So you have to add the total and so total and the array iteration, right? So I cannot just take item 1 only. I have to take item count. That index should be changed accordingly, right? Okay, I take the first element, second element, I am adding it to the total, right? And to do the incrementing thing, I have to increase the count by 1, right? So always my count should increase by 1, right? So count is incremented by 1, right? So this is happening until 10 times. You take the total and you add the next element of the array and you increase the count. So until the array finishes, it is happening. Then finally, you can do the average thing. So you have to have another variable for average for this sprite only, right? Then you set the average. Uh, how to calculate the average? You have to take the total divide by the number of elements. That means 10. So you can keep some variable for this number 10 also. Otherwise, you can just hard code it and show it. And after your setting, you have to print that value and show it as well. So I'm saying average is this one like that. So I'm using the join as usual. So I'm going to tell average is, and I'm going to print my variable answer. Okay. So nothing hard. Don't worry about the average first. So, yeah. Okay. Now we'll run this and see. Here add the delete all thing to start the program from the beginning, right? Okay. Now you can enter different values until 10 times. Okay. Average is calculated, total is calculated. Understood? Not very hard, right? So divide the problem into small parts and then try to achieve the expected result, right? Don't worry about the last thing. So that's the end of the chapter. We'll quickly go through the summary. So in this chapter, we were talking about repetition, right? That means some same thing happening again and again. A condition is usually necessary to begin or end of a repetition, right? It will check a condition, and based on that condition, usually repetition will happen. So we use the scratch for the developments, right? So we use like definite number of iterations, as well as we use a conditional based repetition, and we use endless, that means forever repetition also, right? So repetition within a repetition, we call it as nested repetition. So we did similar things like this. You check initially condition and then the definite number, or definite number, and inside that you have a conditional base one. So different things. And finally, we talked about arrays. So arrays are very important to reduce your complexity of the program, because you can store many items in a single data structure with a single name, right? So when you're developing programs, you have to always make sure you divide the problem into smaller parts, and then you do the relevant development, right? So hope you understood. That's the end of the chapter 3, programming for grade 9. So if you haven't still subscribed my channel, please do subscribe, and please comment if you have any questions or what you feel about the video. And please share these videos with your friends, because everybody can then learn something, especially in this pandemic situation. That's the main objective of this video series. So thank you very much.